Good afternoon, everyone. I, Ruchi Tripathi, on behalf of the Department of Applied Science and Humanities, Universal College of Engineering, NAC B Plus accredited Gujarati Linguistic Minority Institution, affiliated to University of Mumbai in association with CL4, welcome all the faculties, students, campus director sir, and our distinguished guest speaker, Mr. Rahul Mishra, Managing Director CL4 in this webinar. Today, Mr. Rahul Mishra will be taking his session on Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. His 2-hour session will include an overview of Bitcoin, few facts on cryptocurrencies, use cases on cryptocurrencies, top cryptocurrencies in the market, cryptocurrency trading, brief on blockchain, and in the end will be the question answer session on blockchain. Before beginning this webinar, I would like to give a brief introduction of our campus director, sir, Dr. J.B. Patil. Our respected campus director is a man of remarkable credibility. He has done BTech degree from MS Birwe College of Engineering, Latur. He has done his master's in management studies from Vivekanand College of Management, Mumbai University. His ME is in machine design from Sardar Patel College of Engineering, Mumbai University. He is a PhD holder in technology management from New Age International University, Europe. With a vast experience of more than 20 years, he has led, conducted, planned, and delivered many events at national and international level like paper presentations and conferences affiliated to prestigious organizations like CSI, IETE, IEEE, and IET. We welcome you, sir, in this insightful, informative webinar. John, sir, may I request you to play the message given to us by our director, sir? Over to you, John, sir.
Good morning, participants. I welcome you all for the multidisciplinary webinar on Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies organized by Applied Science and Humanities Department of Universal College of Engineering. My dear friends, this webinar will help you to understand the burning topic of cryptocurrencies. I appreciate the efforts taken by Professor Shivam Shukla, Professor Ruchi Tripathi, Professor Teena Trivedi, and Professor Karthik Shankaraman to organize this event. I would also appreciate the efforts taken by the resource person, Mr. Rahul Mishra, who will be delivering his expertise in the topic. My dear friends, participate in this webinar effectively and enthusiastically and learn the new topic of cryptocurrencies and make this webinar successful. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, John, sir. Thank you, Aniket, sir. Now, at second place, it gives me immense pleasure to introduce to the group our distinguished guest speaker from the industry, Mr. Rahul Mishra. Mr. Rahul Mishra is the Managing Director at Bluest Metal Solution and also founder of CL4 Digital Ledger Consulting Private Limited. He is a Chief Technical Advisor at CCTC, a Colombia-based company. He is also a subject matter expert to deliver massive open online course on information security and cyber forensics for SWAYAM platform of MHRD New Delhi. Today, he stands unbeaten in the field of cyber forensics, blockchain, and smart contracts development. He has won various awards and accolades, and to name a few, these were from the Chief Minister of Maharashtra, Cyber Crime Cell Pune, various police stations across the nation, KPN Telecom Netherlands, Chitkara University Punjab, Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya Indore, and IIT Bangalore. Today, his session is targeted for an audience with little to no knowledge of cryptocurrency. I hope it's going to be a fruitful learning session for each one of us. Now, it's my humble request to all the participants to mute their mic during the session when Rahul sir will be starting. In case you have any queries, you can put it in the chat box so that they can be answered in the end during the question answer session. So, Universal College of Engineering welcomes you, Rahul sir. Over to you, sir. Please start the session. Rahul sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. So sorry for this small delay. My name is Rahul Mishra. I'll be presenting this session on Bitcoin and alternate cryptocurrencies at Universal College of Engineering, Mumbai. I'll just give a small disclaimer. The brand CL4, which is owned by Bluest Metal, we nowhere promote trading, buying, or selling of Bitcoins or any other cryptocurrencies. The whole motive to conduct this workshop, this webinar, is to understand the impact and a possible need of Bitcoin and other alternate cryptos only. Now, first of all, we need to understand whether government has prohibited cryptocurrencies in India or not. The answer, we asked this question from Ministry of Finance in Rajya Sabha, that was in July 2019. And we categorically asked the government whether government has prohibited cryptocurrency in the country, and if so, the details thereof. And the answer was specifically no. This was the update in July. Later on 4th of March, there was a ruling by Supreme Court of India, wherein the Internet and Mobile Association of India went against RBI's circular, which came into effect in April 2017. And even then, the Supreme Court favored cryptocurrencies, which was represented by Internet and Mobile Association of India. So in India right now, you can buy cryptocurrencies. They'll be treated as a digital asset, for example, like gold, silver, any other object of any value. Once you'll sell it, then your taxation part will come into picture. If you have any questions, you can ask it then and there if it is very important. Otherwise, we'll take the question and answer at the end. This is about us. We work in mobile forensics, cybercrime investigation, computer forensics. We backward integrated into blockchain solutions in 2015. We made a small group on research in blockchain. In 2017, we moved into blockchain solutions. In 2018, we got proof of concept from government of Maharashtra, from government of Chhattisgarh. In 2019, we went outside India. We established cryptocurrency with crypto coins, which is RealTract. I established an Ethereum mining unit in Israel because it was then legal in Israel. Now it is legal in India also. So you can do mining in India also. Now, that's about me. My experience and everything is already shared, so I'll move on. The topics that we'll be covering, we'll start with history of money. We'll move into cryptography. We'll move into different cryptocurrencies, starting from Bitcoin to Ethereum. How can you mine them? How can you make money? What are the used cases where cryptocurrencies can be used, where blockchain can be used, and so on and so forth. Now, why we need money? Money is essentially a mode of transaction, right? So initially there was something called barter system, wherein you give 1 kg of salt and you'll get maybe 1 kg of gold. Later on, people realized that this system is not very efficient. So precious metals came into picture. You can give maybe 10 grams of gold and buy 100 grams of chicken or 1,000 grams of vegetables and so on and so forth. Then paper money came into existence, which was more based on the promise and on the fact that it will be honored. Say if it says 1,000 rupees, then you'll see that there is a promise written over there. Lastly, fiat money came in. What we use right now is what we call as fiat money. The problem with fiat money is that no one knows how much it is printed. and all the big economies, starting from US to India, they are in huge debt. China is an exception, but otherwise all the economies are in debt. And to get out of debt, they print more and more money, more and more. For example, in case of US, it is more and more US dollars. The stimulus that right now is being provided in the US economy is all about providing more and more US dollars, which is just printing more and more US dollars. Now, America was the last country which gave up gold standard in 1971. Till 1971, I mean, prior to 1971, a lot of countries, they had to put in certain amount of gold against the currency that they were printing. Slowly, because the number of currency notes were increasing and the countries had not so much gold to keep it, they start backing off gold standard. US was the last country which gave up gold standard, and that too in 1971. Now, what is electronic money? We use electronic money daily in our lives. First, we need to have a bank. We need to have a bank account which will give us all sorts of permissions to send money. They will need to do your KYC. It is strictly country oriented. For example, if you want to send some money to your cousin in US or UK, it is next to impossible to do it from your cell phone. However, you can do it from, if you can go to bank and branch and fill in all the forms, yes, you can do it. You have to pay taxes. Now, taxation is, again, it is very subjective, but the truth is that there are taxes, and then there are transaction fees, and those transaction fee also there are taxes. Now sometimes there is a small little risk of getting hacked, losing the money gets stuck in the Swift system, it gets delayed, sometimes it comes back also. So all these risks are there. Now, till a few years back, before Geo actually came in, all of us, we used to recharge, say by paying 200 rupees, we were getting 100 rupees. And if you're making a call wherein 1 rupee will yield into a minute of calling, you are essentially paying 2 rupees for that call, because you paid for those 100 minutes out of 200 rupees. So that, and the same similar kind of fraud also happens in, if you go to malls, you buy a card to play. So for 500 rupees, you'll get only 300 rupees balance. You need to pay maybe 100 bucks a chance for some kind of game, and then so eventually you are paying more. However, you are being charged twice for the same thing. Now, the problem with fiat money is, as you can see on the screen, that money decreases in value. So if you keep money, say in your locker at your home, today's 100 rupee will actually effectively value close to, say, 94, 95 rupees next year. Now there are countries who have gone through the huge financial crisis. For example, Argentinian peso, it lost two-thirds of its value in 2018, just in less than 3 months. Zimbabwe went into inflation, then hyperinflation. They had to print a note which actually values at $1 trillion, and effectively right now the country's official currency is either US dollar or Bitcoin. Again, Venezuela also went into hyperinflation. Now they have come up with their own. I'm sorry. Now they have come up with their own crypto, which is called Petro. But because of this inflation, even if you need to buy a loaf of bread, you will have to give a few kilos of currency in Venezuelan currency. This is how Indian dollar has performed. As I said, that fiat loses value. So around 104 years back in 1916, for 1 Indian rupee, you would have got 16 US dollars, 1 6. In 1947, when we got independence, $1 was equal to 1 rupee. Earlier this month, it was as much as 76 rupees. So the value is fluctuating, but rupee is actually devaluating because of inflation, because of number of other reasons. This is a $1 trillion currency note that I was talking to you about. It was printed in 2008. And this was an official note, but later on it became a novelty item. A lot of people started collecting it because at first it's an official note, and secondly, it is such a huge number. Now we'll go to 1600s. This is called Dutch tulip mania. You can see the tulip bulb, the tulip flower in front of you. The value of these tulip flower increased overnight. So much so that you can actually, people were actually buying homes against a few Dutch tulip. It's known as tulip bulb. Now, as you can see it in the graph itself, the value in less than few months, it increased from nowhere near to 10 to up to 60. This is in Dutch currency. I'm not sure what the currency was then, but we are talking about between 1st December 1634 to February 5th, 1637, less than 3 years. Now, there were similar other bubbles. Now, the bubble which you see on top is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not a bubble, but people call it a bubble. People compare it with the Mississippi bubble, Dutch tulip mania bubble, South Sea bubble, and they say that Nasdaq Composite, which is a benchmark for US stock exchange, is very low. You can see it in the green part. The basic problems we have faced till now regarding currency. As I told you earlier, I'm going to just reiterate the same thing. First, it is centralized. What I mean centralized is that the government of India governs the currency for you. If you want to buy something in US, it has to be in US dollars. If you buy something in UK, it has to be in pounds. Now, the ledgers are absolutely private ledgers. What you are getting from US, it is as per their ledger, whatever they have printed, whatever their inflation is. Third problem, which is strikingly, we have not taken it into account to a large number, is a double spending problem. What we call in India is fake notes. I'll also give you an example in one of my next slides, that a lot of fake notes come into picture and they get into the system. These fake currencies, they get into the system and it actually harms the economy. And last but not the least, they are prone to hack. Now, again, hacking is very subjective. However, if you are safe, if you take all the precautions, the problem number 4 may not exist for a very long time. Now, in 2016, Reserve Bank of India circulated 2 variants of new 500 rupees notes, varying in the alignment of national emblem and change in shadows of Mahatma Gandhi face, along with some serial number issues were concerned. Now, this was published in Economic Times and a lot of other major newspapers, wherein there were notes in circulation of same numbers. They were not fake, they were printed by government only. Some people say it was some kind of scam, some people say it was mistake. I don't know, but this is what we call as double spending problem. Now, how blockchain solved all these problems? First, it is decentralized. I'm going to explain it with a few examples in my next few slides, what is decentralized. But this means that even you can be a part of the blockchain of any coin, say for example, Bitcoin, which means that you are going to support the evolution of Bitcoin, which means that any Bitcoin which comes into picture, you can be a part of it. Now, all these ledgers are publicly maintained. So I can see starting from first Bitcoin, which was ever mined, till the Bitcoin which was mined last. I can see all these details uh, which is available on Block Explorer. I'll also show it to you. It is immutable, which means it is incorruptible, which means I cannot go back in time and change the ledger. So there is no concept of fraud here. And last but not the least, there is no double spending problem. Every coin is accounted for. Every coin is there in the system, decentralized. You can go and have a look at the ledger yourself, and all the problem will be solved. Now, again, what is cryptocurrencies? It is new type of digital money used to exchange on agreed upon values. It is just like regular currencies, but it uses cryptography to secure transactions and control the creation of its native currency. There are so many currencies across the world. I'm not sure how many you guys have know about, but There are thousands and thousands of cryptocurrencies, and a lot of them have value also. Howsoever little, we don't know. The 75% of cryptocurrency market is dominated by two currencies only. About 65 to 66% is with Bitcoin, and around 9 to 10% is with Ethereum. So as I said, how many guesses? Any guesses on how many cryptocurrencies are there all over the world? This is today's data. There are approximately 5,519 cryptocurrencies across the world with approximate value of 256 billion US dollars. These are few, but you can get all the data on CoinMarketCap or investing.com. So you can go and readily have a look. This is, as I said, today's data. You can see 256 billion is the market cap and around 5,519 different cryptocurrencies. Now, this is interesting. People think that Bitcoin has 65% market share. So this must have the highest volume also. Now, if you see in this particular slide, Bitcoin is at number 2. The volume stands at 33.59 billion US dollars. Number 1 is Tether, which is incidentally at number 3 written here because of the value. Now its volume is around 35.66 billion US dollars, more than 2 billion US dollar than Bitcoin. Tether is a stable coin. It value remains always 1 US dollars or just around that, and people use it to hedge against any kind of downfall in the market. All these Tether or other major stable coins, they are backed by insurance or gold reserve so that the value doesn't decrease. These are some interesting cryptocurrencies. For example, 1 gram. It's an Abu Dhabi based company. You can actually buy golds in denominations of 1 grams. Pax Gold, again, this is backed by, they have Pax Gold and Paxos. They belong to the same company. Paxos is a stable coin. It's equal to 1 US dollar. Pax Gold is equivalent to some standard of gold. I'm forgetting the exact number. I think it's 400 grams of gold or something. You can actually receive a brick of gold once you reach that figure. Now, they have received bit license from City of New York, and they have backed these currencies against reserves of dollar, against reserves of gold, and they're all insured. Similarly, we have Libra coming up, which is backed by Facebook, and China has already started experimenting of its own crypto, of its own currency. Right now, it's being tested in the local market, but soon it will be available for global usage also. Now I'll come to the most famous cryptocurrency. What is Bitcoin? So in one line, it's an open source, purely peer-to-peer version of electric cash. Uh, Peer-to-peer is different from centralized versions. So we are just going to see it with a few figures in a few of my next slides. Now, history of Bitcoin. It is created by Satoshi Nakamoto. Apparently, I think one of the most famous names of 21st century is Satoshi Nakamoto. No one knows who he is, but there are few guesses who this person can be, but there is no surety that this is the person who created Bitcoin. Now, in October 31, 2008, the first description of Satoshi Nakamoto came in, and he wrote a paper, peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and he named it Bitcoin. Now, this is how the paper looks like. You can actually search for it online, and it's available online. The code is in C++, so you can code it. There is no harm there. Now, he has defined, and the paper and the concept, it is so beautifully written. They have explained everything on how it is going to be mined, how it is going to be halved, what is the usage, transfer. Everything is explained there, and it is one of the most beautiful things. And but Bitcoin, being the largest currency in circulation, still has no one owner. It is owned by nodes, around 81,000 nodes globally, and people believe in it because there is no one master. Now, as I said, it started with an electronic paper which says peer-to-peer electronic cash system, Bitcoin. In January 2009, it was implemented in its first client and released to the open source community. And on January 3rd, the Bitcoin network came into existence with the release of the first Bitcoin software and the issuance of first Bitcoins. Initially, the block size was more, so with less of effort, a lot of Bitcoins could be mined. So until mid 2010, Satoshi Nakamoto was collaborating with the developers on the Bitcoin software with the Bitcoin community. However, around that time, he gave the control of the source code repository to another developer called Gavin Anderson. And he also transferred several related domains to various prominent members of the Bitcoin community. Now, he always wanted that this has to be, the project has to be community driven and not a person driven. And prior to his absence and handover, Satoshi made all modifications to the source code and he vanished. And since then, there has been no trace of who Satoshi is. Just last 2 days, there was some movement in the wallets which were held by Satoshi Nakamoto, but otherwise there was no movement also in last 10 years now. So I'll just explain what Bitcoin is. So it doesn't have an intrinsic value. So it's like you see cash in your accounts in your bank accounts. It is very similar to that. Just that one Bitcoin right now has around 9,150 US dollar of value in terms of exchange. So it's like gold, and the value is also increasing, just like gold's value is increasing. Both have a value only because society has confidence that they will maintain the said value over time. On the contrary, the value is going to increase over time. Now, what gives Bitcoin value? As I said, it does not have any intrinsic value. It depends on market demands. It depends on what we say as demand and supply. The number of Bitcoin is fixed in the market. It is 21 million. The numbers are being mined as we speak, and the final mining will complete in 2140, around 120 years from now. After that, there won't be any more. There won't be any mining for Bitcoins. So the demand is more, the supply is limited, the demand is increasing every day, which is fueling the price of Bitcoin every day, which means Bitcoin price is increasing because there is limited supply and because the demand is increasing. This is a value of Bitcoin. When it started, the value was really low. It was around 0.08 US dollars. It touched its high in 2017 December. It touched around 19,700 US dollars. Earlier this year in February, it touched 10,500, 10,700 US dollar per Bitcoin we are talking about. And today's morning rate was around 9,100, 150 per Bitcoin. Now, these are the values as we were talking about, and you could have actually bought. So if you invested something in 2008, 2011, it was $1. So if you bought something worth say 70 rupees, you could have instead bought a Bitcoin, which is worth 9,100 US dollars. The approximate return is in more than 30,000%. The return on investment is more than 30,000%. So if you bought something in say July 2011 for say around 2,500 rupees, you could have made around 7 lakhs for the same amount for today. So, but that's a value that has increased. No one saw the future in cryptocurrencies. No one was sure how cryptocurrencies will shape up or how the technology will shape up. A lot of emphasis of how Bitcoin came into existence goes to the mobile apps because it is very easy to use. Once you are on the app, you can transfer Bitcoins, you can receive Bitcoins. And that is how the value has increased. That's a Bitcoin chart. If you see till 2017, the chart was around 50 US dollars and it was almost a straight line. After that, it suddenly jumped up. This jump happened mostly due to a lot of media exposure, people buying and selling. In 2017, 2018, a lot of exchanges, cryptocurrency exchanges came up. and they start, and then you can actually trade. You can do intraday kind of trading. So you buy in morning, you sell in evening, or you buy today or you sell next day. And people were making profit of 50-60% in 1 2 3 days. So that is when the actually jump came in. A lot of hype was also built around bitcoins and ethereum also. I'll show you the chart of ethereum also. So again, ethereum also touched close to 100 usd in its sorry, 1200 usd in its price around the same time. Now bitcoin and ethereum, these two currencies in particular, they go almost hand in hand. So if bitcoin goes up, traditionally if you see the charts, if bitcoin goes up, Ethereum also goes up. If Bitcoin comes down, Ethereum also comes down. And that is the case with most of the cryptocurrencies. There can be exceptions, but that will be at a very limited level. However, if Bitcoin comes down drastically, 4, 5, 6%, all the cryptocurrencies come down 4, 5, 6%, or maybe more also. If Bitcoin goes up, yes, all the currencies goes up. This is Ethereum. This is a real tract. This is one of our currencies which we are running out of China and Korea. You see the chart was again relatively low. And once it started hitting the up, at our peak, we were valued around 50 million US dollars. Right now, also, we are valued around 8 million US dollars. Now, as I said that it goes up and it goes down. So this is a sine graph. If you see Bitcoin goes up and Bitcoin comes down, all the currencies they go up and all the currencies they come down. So they follow a sine pattern. They go up, they come down. However, the market is very nascent. It is very new. You don't have a lot of history of any kind of technical charts which are available in market. So you can't say what is actually happening. But this is the trend right now. These are Winklevoss twins. They were unable to gain control of Facebook, but they received money as settlement. They received close to 60 million US dollars, 60 or 600 million US dollars, out of which they invested 11 million US dollars in Bitcoin. Right now, they are the only Bitcoin billionaires in the world globally because they invested a lot of amount in Bitcoins. They not even bought Bitcoins from market. They also invested heavily in the mining of mining in the mining equipments and mining of Bitcoin. So they have received huge amount of Bitcoins. Now, can there be unlimited Bitcoin? No, the algorithm limits the number of Bitcoins to 21 million, which in our Indian context stands at 2 crore 10 lakhs. Now, it is predicted that all Bitcoins will be produced by the year 2140, around 120 years from now, give and take maybe 1 year. Now, right now, we are at the stage wherein we receive 6.25. If you see the fourth one, when Bitcoin started, people were receiving 50 Bitcoins per block, and the block reward halves in every 4 years. So from 2012 to 16, it became 25, 16 to 20, 12.5, 20 to 24, which just happened 15 days back. Now the block reward is 6.25 Bitcoins per block. And this is going to continue and half till 2140. Now I'll just give you some numbers on Bitcoin. The total number of Bitcoins which are in circulation officially stands at 1.8 million, which is roughly 87% of overall Bitcoins. There are another 13% of Bitcoin which will be mined in next 120 years. There are roughly 900 Bitcoins generated every day. And approximately one block is generated in 10 minutes. And block generated per day is 144. Now, more miners, if they come into the system, the code is so beautifully written that if there are more miners in the system, there'll be less blocks which will be mined. However, if there are less miners in the system, there'll be more blocks which will be mined. So again, demand and supply, they have managed it here also. Now, we'll talk specifically about Bitcoin here. What is the advantage? First advantage is the fee is very minimum. And the fee, it only you are only charged once you do any kind of transaction. There are no fee for holding, there are no fee for maintaining your accounts and all those things. It's all free. The setup is all free. There is no chargeback. So if in a credit card, if you report to a credit card company that there is some fraud which has happened, they're going to charge back for that particular transaction. However, there are no chargebacks in this, so it is beneficial to the business owners. It has fast peer-to-peer transaction. You can do any kind of worldwide payment. The processing fee is extremely low. So if I want to pay someone to say in Nigeria, now if payments, if you want to make any kind of payments, particularly in African region, it is very hard. Even through PayPal, even through Payoneer, even through any other kind of Swift, if you want to do it from your account, it is very, very, very difficult. So Bitcoin comes to our rescue, and you can actually make payments from all sort of peer-to-peer transactions to any part in the world. And if you pay a slightly higher processing fee, it can happen in less than 30 minutes. Now, it is global and it can be used all over the country. However, it is not a part of any global currency war like we see right now between US and China. So there is no global currency war per se for any kind of cryptocurrencies right now. Now, it allows direct fund transfer between two people without any third party financial institution, even at global level. So if I want to say, if I want to send money to someone in South Korea, I can do it right away. I can use number of currencies. I can use number of wallets. I can use numbers of, basically I can use number of ways and means to send or receive for that matter, any kind of amount. The amount is also not a limit. the the transaction and processing fee is really low. So if I do a transaction worth say 1 Bitcoin, I'll be paying less than 100 rupees, and I'll be paying in Bitcoins only. So once I send the Bitcoin, the fee will be charged by the network itself. So first, I don't have to pay anything extra. It is adjusted in the system itself. Secondly, the processing fee is really low. I don't have to maintain any account in any bank or any place else also. I need not to pay do any kind of KYC. However, now in a lot of major cryptocurrency exchanges, above a certain limit, if you do a lot of transaction, you will have to do a KYC, which is know your customer, which essentially means that they will have your documents like your Aadhaar card and your passport and your photograph and so on and so forth. But again, your account cannot be frozen. There is nothing like low balance. There are no, so if your balance goes like in banks, if you need to maintain say 15,000 rupees and it goes less than 15,000 rupees, then they charge some kind of penalty on that. On that penalty, there'll be a GST component and so on and so forth, which is not the case here. It is only when you use it you pay. If you don't use it, you need not to pay. They have beautiful apps. The UI is awesome. You can use it, extremely user friendly, and very low cost. Again, there is no arbitrary limit in fund transfer. If you have 5 Bitcoins, which will roughly worth 35 36 lakhs in today's value, you want to send it to say someone in China, you can do it with click of a mouse. You need not to take permission, you need not to tell anyone, you need not to ask anyone. It is your money, and that is what Satoshi Nakamoto always believed in, that it is your money which should serve you. Yeah, I mean, you need to pay taxes, there are government interventions, there are limits and schemes, but ultimately at the end of the day, it is your money which should serve you. This is on a lighter note, that there was a time when a boy asked his Bitcoin investing dad for 1 Bitcoin for his birthday, and his dad said, what, 15,000 USD? 14,000 is a lot of money. Why do you need 16,000 for? This particularly happened in December of 2017, wherein the price was fluctuating 2-3,000 every minute, as not every minute, every hour or so. It was going up, it was coming down, and it was crazy time. Since then, however, now the market has matured a lot. There is not so much fluctuation. However, if there is a what we call in our lingo as Bitcoin whale, a whale is someone who has more than 10,000 Bitcoin in his or her wallet. If they dump those Bitcoins in the market, yes, the market crashes, but it crashes by 5, 7, 8%. And then again, it recovers. So it's happening for last 1 year now, at least. So the market has matured. You don't see silly transactions now. You don't see people pumping and dumping. So it's not happening at that level, at the level at which it was happening in 2017. Now, lost bitcoins. Now, this is very important. If any one of you wants to deal with bitcoins or any other cryptocurrencies for that matter, please, I'll be covering the wallet part in future in my future slides also. Please keep your password, which is also known as private key in this case, very safe. Now, in between October 2000, in October 2011, someone lost 2,609 Bitcoin because they sent it to invalid address. Now, I'm going to show you the address also. Address essentially is a alphanumeric character. However, if it is a small a, it has to be a small a. If it is a capital C, it has to be a capital C. If you mistype one character, it goes into a wrong address and you cannot recover it forever. If you forget your private key, so again, private key is like a password. However, you cannot change it by, like we do for our emails or for our banking passwords. You cannot change it. You cannot reset it. Your private key is your private key. If you lose it, you lose the balance in your wallet. So till November 2017, around 3 million bitcoins were lost. There was someone called James Howell who lost 7,500 BTC in 2018. There was a pizza party last week. May last week is always important for Bitcoiners because someone actually paid 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas in 2010. That amount would have been huge right now, but someone actually bought only 2 pizzas out of 10,000 Bitcoins in 2010. Uh, Bitcoin vocabulary, however, it fits into almost all the cryptocurrencies. First is your wallet. Your wallet, again, it's an uh, alphanumeric as a set of characters, you can say. Your Bitcoin address, again, it's your wallet. Your private key, as I said, is your password. Blockchain, also known as Explorer in this case, and miners. So if you want to deal in Bitcoin, I think the first four will be useful to you, but not fifth. You may not come across so much so because it happens behind the scene. Now, what's a wallet? A normal wallet, it holds your Bitcoins and Bitcoins addresses. Now, one Bitcoin wallet can have multiple Bitcoin addresses. Nowadays, the policy of all the exchanges is such that after every transaction, whether you send Bitcoin or whether you receive Bitcoin, your Bitcoin address will change. However, your wallet will remain the same. So, which means that uh, your wallet can hold multiple Bitcoins. However, one Bitcoin address can receive right now only one Bitcoin transaction. Now, as we know, Bitcoin uses public key cryptography. So here, Bitcoin addresses is nothing but our public key. Like for example, your email, it can be treated as your public key, and your password, it can be your private key. Now, there are several types of wallets. Again, this is applicable on all sorts of cryptocurrencies, starting from software wallets to hardware wallets to online wallets to then there are paper wallets and different kind of wallets. What are software wallets? So you can download an app from say blockchain.com, or you can download an app from say a wallet called Trust, or you can go to BitPay and you will have a wallet. Now, these apps are present both on iOS and Android, and they also give you your private key, which means if you don't have access to these apps, you can actually go onto the Bitcoin Explorer and you can download the blockchain of Bitcoin and can use it for transfers. So if you know how to do it, you have the private key and you can transfer the Bitcoin. Now, online wallets, say for example, you go to a Binance, which is the world's biggest crypto exchange, or you go to a local Bitcoin, or you go to an MXC, which is one of the top 5 crypto exchanges. Now you can do all the things which you were doing in your offline wallets, in your other wallets, software wallets, but they don't give you the private key, which means now they take your Bitcoin, they keep your Bitcoin, but that's only only a database entry. Your Bitcoin is actually in someplace else, which they call as cold wallet. which is not connected to internet. Now here, your software wallets, these are hot wallets, which are readily connected to internet and also prone to hacks. However, in this case, because the entry that you see in your Binance or a local Bitcoin is only a database entry, and you don't have a private key, so which means they are not connected to internet, which means there is less chance of being hacked. Now, what are physical wallets? So there are physical wallets. Physical wallets essentially are nothing but pen drive which has preloaded software in it. There is Trezor, there is Keepay. I personally use Ledger Nano S. You can set up these hardware wallets, these physical wallets, as per your need. So you can set up Ethereum, you can set up Litecoin, you can set up Doge, you can set up Bitcoin, you can set up all the other currencies which are supported there. Now, this is what a hardware wallet looks like. I use a Ledger Nano X. They have screen. You can actually buy it from Amazon, and but you cannot do a transaction. So for transaction, there is a software interface which is there. Say, for example, on my laptop. So I'll connect my laptop to my Ledger Nano, and then I'll transfer the Bitcoin on my software interface, and from there I can sell it or transfer it. Now, as I said earlier, cryptocurrencies use public key cryptography and digital signature, and that any transaction which happens, any logic which comes in, it is verified by at least three different transactions. So, which happens at least three different nodes. Now, you can always have more number of nodes verifying the transactions. Now, every transaction, it generates a hash. Now, what is hash? It's a method to guarantee data integrity. It gives fixed length output for variable input. It's a one-way function. The hashing algorithm used in Bitcoins is SHA-256. Even in Indian Penal Code, Indian Court of Law, SHA-256 is the right algorithm to use. Now, if you can calculate a hash, say if I write Bitcoin with B capital, I'll receive a different hash. If I write Bitcoin as all capital, I receive a different hash. And if I write Bitcoin as all small, I receive a different hash, which means the way you write it, the output will differ. Now, coming to P2P network, wherein every computer is connected to everyone else. It is not centralized. This is a classic example of decentralized network. It is not centralized, it is not server based, and everyone is connected to everyone. So even if someone fails in between, you can connect to someone else. And that is how it supports the integrity in the system. Now, coming to the important part, what is blockchain? Now, blockchain essentially is the underlying technology which supports Bitcoin. It supports how Bitcoin works. So in 1999, to timestamp a document, it came in as an idea to timestamp a document, so the data cannot be tampered. So if you have, say, a Word file, and every file has metadata, which is the inherent data, when the file was formed, where it was formed. So even if you take photographs now on your cell phone, and if your GPS is activated, you receive that data, that where the photograph was taken, at what time it was taken. If the GPS is activated, it can say in my Apple, it can actually pinpoint the geography also where it was taken. Again, in distributed network, the data is tamper proof. So once data recorded, it's hard to change the data. And that is where the integrity comes in. That is where the integrity in data comes in. It is decentralized. It uses peer-to-peer network. And for security purposes, it uses cryptography functions. Now, what's a blockchain? So all Bitcoin transactions are stored in a public ledger called the blockchain. You can actually go anytime, go to any Bitcoin Explorer and can see any kind of transaction. As I said earlier, it is not maintained by an authority, but by a network of communicating nodes and miners running open source Bitcoin software. For Bitcoin particularly, there are around 81,000 nodes right now as we speak. Now, transactions are sent to this network using readily available software application. As I said, wallets in this case, they will validate the transaction, keep a copy on the blockchain, which is also known as digital ledger, and then forward these additions to the nodes. The blockchain is a distributed database, which means each network node verifies and stores its own copy of the blockchain. Suppose this is a wooden log is a single Bitcoin transaction. A bunch of it is called a block. I'll just show you the image also. So if you see, there is a hash function for number of wallets starting from 33S to 3C to 34B, 32OM, 3FD, right? And this yields into transactions of wallets to different wallets of different accounts. So if you see the green arrow, which goes and it goes to two different wallets, wherein you receive 7.84 BTC and 0.008 BTC. Now, as I said, Bitcoin network has more than 84,000 nodes. On the contrary, the Swift network, which supports the overseas settlement. So if you want to get money from say US or UK, your bank uses something called Swift. So every set of branches have their own Swift code. So Swift code has only 11,000 nodes running right now. So Bitcoin network is essentially 8 times bigger than Swift nodes. Now, what is mining? Now, transactions are recorded into distributed, replicated public database known as blockchain with consensus achieved by a proof of work system called mining. Now, there are various consensus algorithms. For example, proof of work, proof of stake, proof of honor. There are at least 35, 40 different types of consensus algorithms. Bitcoin uses particularly proof of work system. As I said, there are various consensus algorithm, proof of work, which is used by Bitcoin, proof of stake, which is used by Ethereum, proof of honor, for example, RealTrack, proof of authority, which is the algorithm in blockchain. Again, proof of elapsed time consensus model authority, which is again another algorithm in blockchain. Now, what is proof of work? Proof of work was essentially proposed in 1997 by Adam Back, and it now it is currently used in cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin. Litecoin is forked from Bitcoin only, and others to reach an agreement, or rather a decentralized agreement around adding a particular block onto the blockchain. So everyone gives in their consensus to add particular block in the blockchain, and the block is added. Hashcash was initially one of the first cryptocurrencies which came into 97, and it also used proof of work only with the SHA-256 algorithm, but it could not pick up. 97, I think it was too ahead of its time. Proof of stake, again, it is the type of consensus model. The number of coins you have stored in the system matters. This particular system initially was thought to be prone to something called as 51% attack, wherein if someone will have 51% of the coins in the system, they can manipulate the database. However, there is no ready example of any kind of 51% attack in any of the major coins. It has happened in small time coins, but that too at experimental level only. There are other proof of honors, proof of authority, proof of elapsed time. There are 35, 40 different types of consensus algorithms. Due to time limitation, I won't be able to cover those right now. Now, Hashcash, it was proposed in 97 by Adam Back. Now, it is said Adam Back is the same person who is Satoshi Nakamoto. It has been, there are different ways and means and proofs which has come into market to the community, because Adam Back was actually the person who wrote everything in 1997 itself. He says that Hashcash is proof of work algorithm that requires a selectable amount of work to compute, but the proof can be verified essentially. So you need not to complete the entire work. You can do it in parts, and you can verify it and can send it over the network. So blockchain also uses similar methods like Hashcash's proof of work. It controls blockchain uses proof of work to control the creation of block. Any block which is created, then the nonce is added, and then the new block comes in. Now again, the supply will be same. Even miner is increased. So if you increase the number of mining, you see in Bitcoin, if you increase the number of mining, the block reward is same, but block rewards, it is distributed in more number of miners rather than the limited number of miners. For Bitcoin in particular, the limit is 21 million. Around 18 million are already mined, and it takes roughly 10 minutes to generate a block. Now, what are the uses of blockchain? One of the first uses is cryptocurrencies. Then you can use it as a digital wallet. There is something called digital medical repository, smart contracts which can execute themselves, which are extremely useful for, say, land records, land registry, healthcare data storage, and academic authenticity. There are some things that only certain blockchains can do. There are certain things that certain blockchains can do better than the traditional scenario, what is happening right now. And there are some things that blockchains cannot do at all. So it is wrong to expect that blockchain is going to change the system overall. Now, stuff which only blockchains can do, a classic example remains at cryptocurrencies. That it is, it's an awesome example which blockchains give us, wherein we can run cryptocurrencies on them. Now, stuff which blockchains can do better is data authentication and verification, which means, and security settlement, which means anything which changes hands regularly, as I gave example of land records, maybe your vehicles, maybe any kind of data verification, say your degree authentication, your certificate authentication, and so on and so forth. This blockchains can do better and can do it in a faster manner. Now, blockchains cannot do high speed trading, wherein equities, stocks, they change hands, millions of stocks change hands in 1 second. That cannot be done by blockchains because the data, they cannot authenticate the data in such small period of time. They cannot do immediate transfer like your IMPS transfer, which happens in less than a second. So again, this is not possible this cannot be done on blockchain. Now, roughly there are two types of blockchain. I believe there is only one type of blockchain, which is blockchain only. Because private blockchain is something, is nothing but a set of databases privately held by a few people. However, it is still called a private blockchain, and then there is public blockchain. Example of private blockchain remains at multi-chain, Coda. Public blockchain is Ethereum, Bitcoin, Hyperledger. These are classic examples of public blockchains. Now, what is the difference? So in a public blockchain, you can say, for example, a Bitcoin blockchain, you can actually open, read. If you are a miner, if you are a contributor, if you are running a node, you can also contribute. However, in a private blockchain, you will have to take permission from someone, from a set of people, or from the owner to make any kind of change. Now, public blockchain is naturally slower because the number of nodes, say in case of Bitcoin, it is 81,000. So it is slower. However, private blockchains are faster because the number of nodes are limited and it is there for a very limited network. Uh, Public blockchain, the most famous consensus algorithms are POW and POS. However, in a private blockchain, there is no consensus algorithm as such. There are pre-approved participants who are approved for a pre-approved job, that their job is to do this only. If their job is to authenticate the data, they're going to do the same thing. So there is no consensus algorithm as such. The assets in case of public blockchain, these are native assets. For example, Ethereum, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and in private blockchain, it can be any asset. Now, how banks use Bitcoin, this is we got from ICICI Bank on how they have explained what blockchain is and how they are trying to experiment it. Uh, a coin on CoinMarketCap is at number 4, which is called Ripple. It is denoted as XRP. They are trying to challenge the Swift transactions, wherein you need a Swift transaction for any kind of overseas payment settlement. They're challenging it, and right now IndusInd Bank, Axis Bank, Federal Bank, they're using Ripple. So Ripple as a technology is also very good for any kind of overseas settlement of payments, and they also have a coin which is called XRP, ranked at number 4. People say it has a lot of value and great future ahead. Now, coming to mining, what is mining? So in a nutshell, mining is intentionally designed to be resource intensive and difficult, so that number of blocks found each day by miners remains steady. As I said earlier, demand and supply. So if there is more demand, there is less supply of every block to each miner. Individual blocks must contain a proof of work to be considered valid. The proof of work is verified by other Bitcoin nodes each time when they receive a block. The primary purpose of mining is to allow Bitcoin computers or nodes to reach a secure temper resistance consensus. And once they reach a consensus, once there is any data in Bitcoin Explorer is there, it is immutable, it is incorruptible. So whatever that is there, it is going to be there forever. Now, it's also the mechanism used to introduce new Bitcoins into the system. So once you mine, you bring in more new Bitcoins into the system. And a successful miner finding a new block is rewarded with newly created Bitcoins and transaction fee. So the transaction fee, which we essentially pay for any kind of transaction in Bitcoin, however small it is, it goes to the miners only to solve these, to do mining, to solve these mathematical problems. Now, what are crypto miners? They are distributed group of nodes who add transactions to the block, which gets added to the blockchain. So if I want to send a Bitcoin to Ruchi madam here, say, so then I need her address, which is the public address. I will send it to her and some transaction fee will be deducted. This transaction fee will be taken by miners in order to do the transaction and verify the transaction. This is the work they do. So they have to perform some work to add the block into the blockchain. The transaction block adds to the blockchain. And again, once it is added in the blockchain, the miners get the fee and the receiver will receive the Bitcoin. The miners are awarded Bitcoins for the work they perform. Now, say for example, we have Gary, Garth, and Glenn as Bitcoin miners, and each of them are running different nodes. Now their computers bundle the transactions of the past 10 minutes into the new transaction block, because roughly in every 10 minutes you will receive a block. Now the miners computers are set up to calculate cryptographic hash functions. So as I said, every transaction has a particular hash. You can go to an explorer and you can explore based on the transaction hash or based on the public address, which is also known as wallet address on any explorer. Now again, the hash value adds into the system, into the block, the nonce gets added and it creates a new value, right? And that is how one block is mined. Multiple block is mined and it creates a blockchain. Now, how do you verify how a transaction is verified? So say for example, Alice transferred to Bob, it gets buried beneath under more recent transactions. I'll just show it to you. Like there are different transactions here you see. And if you see, you can see these many transactions, plus there are 94 remaining, it says here. And these are very small little values, 0.0055, 0.069, 0.44, 0.08. So 0 and then some value, or maybe 00 and then some value, and then there are 94 remaining. And all these are yielding into 7.848 around Bitcoins. That's it. Across two different wallets. So all these plus 94 of these will all add up and will go to two different wallets as these different values. Now, do I have to do all the hash calculations on my own? The answer is no, because if I am going to do it, that means I may affect the integrity of the system. So it may not remain immutable, it may not remain incorruptible, because I'm doing it. So that's why a lot of people come in. That's why those 81,000 nodes come in and everyone contributes in the system. So the mining is done using open source mining software that are available freely on internet. Now, there are two types of mining, CPU mining and GPU mining. CPU mining is used for Bitcoin mining. GPU, which is graphical processing unit, is used for Ethereum mining. There are different mining softwares available over internet. You can use any one of them. And that's how the interface of a BFG miner looks for a Mac. That's how it looks for a Mac system. That's how it looks for a Windows system. Now, naturally, mining from one computer is not easy. You may receive very less reward out of it. So people do it in multiple computers. Those multiple computers are known as mining farm. Now, this is the world's largest Bitcoin and Ethereum mining farm, which is done by OXBTC. There is a website called btc.com. They do it with government of Kyrgyzstan in Kyrgyzstan, and that is how they make their money. So they have exchanges, they have a ready-made supply of Bitcoin and Ethereums, and that is how they make money. As you see, these are small miners, but these miners are in series, and it creates a lot of heat. So it made sense for a lot of cold countries, say for example, Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan, to do it in their cold areas. So you need not to first maintain air conditioning, and secondly, it will also keep the place warm. This is the largest Bitcoin mining farm in North America. It does not exist now because of they had problems with the city, because it was sucking a lot of electricity out of the city and the grid was fluctuating. This is our mining farm in Israel. We do GPU mining, which means Ethereum mining. We roughly mine 1 to 1.5 Ethereum every day. We started it on experimental basis, and then we increased the number. Right now we have 53 units there. Again, I'll just explain the mining hardware also. You can also do mining on USB hardware, but now if you're going to do it, it may burn your laptop or your desktop. But you can do some small coins. You can do maybe a Dogecoin you can mine, maybe other small coins you can mine. It does not take a lot of electricity. You can also do mining on servers. These are servers of the size of an Almira. And you can mine. And the more you mine, the more block rewards you're going to receive. This is the most famous Ant miner, which is used for Bitcoin mining. Latest version is S9, which is used for Bitcoin mining only. Now, please understand that suppose if Bitcoin goes out of system tomorrow, there is no use of this particular hardware after this. This is again, as I said, a GPU mining based in Israel. We use graphical processing unit, which can be later used for gaming purposes also. Now, a lot of companies, including Bitcoin.com, are offering cloud mining services. So you can buy the hash rate from them, and basically you can invest into their inventory, and they invest the money that you are going to invest in them. They invest this money in buying new hardware and increasing in turn, increasing the mining size of theirs. There is Hashflare. There is Genesis Mining is one of the biggest mining companies. They do a lot of mining for different coins: Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dash. A lot of these are unknown to me. Zcash is known, Ethereum is known, but people do a lot of fraud also by saying that you'll get a Bitcoin, you'll get this, you'll get that, but don't get into that. Only if you're investing, only invest in top coins, or only invest in coins that you believe in. Otherwise, don't fall for any kind of other stuff. Now, what makes so much investments and help maintain the blockchain? Now you get transaction fee, which is low, but there are millions and millions of transactions happening just in Bitcoin, and there are billions of transactions happening in all those other 5,000 coins. So if you do mining, yes, it is a rewarding thing to do. However, the entry barrier is really high. You will have to invest in infrastructure, you will have to invest in hardware, then there is electricity, but yes, you're going to mine. And obviously, it provides a way to bring in new Bitcoin or new Ethereum in circulation, as there is no central minting authority. It's not like that RBI is going to print Bitcoins. The only way to make Bitcoins is to mine it. The initial growth of Bitcoin ecosystem and overall cryptocurrency ecosystem was attributed to media hype. A lot of hype came in, and people got familiar to Bitcoin, and then people starting investing in it. They started hoarding also, wherein they were buying and not selling, which is sort of good thing. But once people started trading into it, the price fluctuated. Now, how to protect your Bitcoin? This is a classic way to protect your Bitcoin. It is not a physical entity, so you cannot put it in your um, into a vault. So first you need to back up your entire wallet. You need to encrypt your online backups. You can't forget your password. The password, particularly of your wallet, you cannot change it. Your private key, you cannot change it. So you cannot forget it. You need to keep your software up to date. Use a multi-signature to protect to protect against any kind of theft. And your mnemonic codes, you need to write it. Mnemonic codes are essentially set of words, set of 9 words or set of 12 words to recover your wallet. Now, this service is not offered by each and every wallet. So in some cases, you are going to receive mnemonic codes. However, in some other cases, you will not receive mnemonic codes, which means you will only receive a private key. Now, if you can't find your wallet, if you have your password, if you have a private key, but you don't remember your public key, if you don't remember your wallet, then obviously you are going to lose it. There is fear of government intervention. However, I would like to tell you that there is nothing illegal about Bitcoin. In fact, just yesterday, Supreme Court has also ruled in the favor that if you're trading in Bitcoins, your account cannot be blocked. So now you can also trade actively, just pay your taxes on whatever money you make there. So our cash is more anonymous than Bitcoins, and it is also not tied to any entity. So any currency note that you receive, you don't know the trail behind that, who has printed it, how many hands it has passed on, and what kind of usage was it put into. But obviously with increased popularity, government will attempt to control it, tax it, regulate it. So they have succeeded in doing it. They have succeeded in at least taxing it and regulating it. They can't control it because it is not in their hands. But as I said, that you don't know the authenticity, you don't, there is no blockchain of the currency note in your pocket, so you don't know from where it has come from. Now some people say that it's a bubble, some people say it's future of currency. We are I am seeing Bitcoin for almost 7 years now, investing in for more than 5 years now. I don't see it as a bubble, but it's for, and now government has also defined it. So Bitcoin is a digital asset. It's like gold. I can keep it in my wallet, and as soon as I am going to encash it, as soon as I'm going to sell it, the money that I make, I will have to pay taxes on that. So if you have this much of money, you would you should you buy Bitcoins? I would say yes. If not all, maybe 10% of it. Right now, a lot of companies are offering different debit cards also. MCO is the one on your left. I have this. I don't have this one. I have slightly higher version. It is red in color, but it is supported by Visa, and so the card has the card has my wallet address. My wallet has my different Bitcoin addresses, so I can load my card and I can spend it for that day's Bitcoin price, and I need to just swipe it. And it also has NFC enabled in it, so I can just swipe. I can go to a DMart or can go to a Tanishq and buy stuff. So can I make my money mining Bitcoin? A lot of students like you guys thought that, your colleges have a lot of idle computers sitting there, 100, 200, 500 computers sitting there. But it requires a lot of power in terms of CPU power, and it requires a lot of electricity also. So maybe if you want to do it in Universal College of Engineering, Mumbai, it is not a good idea because the electricity is expensive and the CPU power required is right now it's very high. Now, the US government, it says about to, but then US government eventually auctioned around 30,000 Bitcoins, which they got after they caught someone who was running something known as Silk Route, wherein they were selling drugs and other illegal material out of darknet. So FBI shuttered the site in October 2014, 13, and they sold nearly 30,000 Bitcoins. Now, people are even robbing Bitcoins. You can see in London, armed robbers raided the house of a virtual currency trader and forced him to transfer Bitcoins. So this happened last year. Companies are paying employees in Bitcoin. This is December 15, 2017. Company in Japan wants to start paying employees in Bitcoin. So all sorts of use cases we are getting. People are getting robbed also. People are receiving salaries also. Now, these are the prominent companies which, starting from WordPress.com to Tor Project to Reddit to Private Bay, who accept Bitcoins. This list is slightly old. I think it's around 6 months old. There are good prominent companies who have joined this particular bandwagon. Now, this is a Bitcoin ATM in Norway. One of the first Bitcoin ATMs came in Canada, I think. It was a two-way ATM. This is a two-way ATM in Toronto, Canada. You can buy and sell Bitcoin both into it. Now, in countries like Taiwan, South Korea, Philippines, Switzerland, users can visit convenience stores, bank ATMs, subway teller machine, and you will see a Bitcoin option. Now, uh, Bitcoin versus token. So if you are in Ethereum network, I was telling you about the number 3 currency globally, and it was called a stable coin USDT. That's a token. So there is a difference between coin and token. Coins are generated from mining process. For example, Bitcoin. Tokens are generally pre-generated. For example, Ethereum. Now, coins have a specific property like acts as medium of exchange because it represents a unit in the account like physical money. A token value are defined by central authority, centralized authority, which can be essentially a project also. For example, our project is RealTract. A coin acts as physical money. You can actually exchange it. Coupons, I mean, so tokens also act as physical money, but not so much so. Not all tokens acts as physical money. A lot of them give you some kind of barter option against some, say, uh, use it for smart contracts or digital medical repository and so on and so forth. Now, Bitcoin exchanges. So Bitcoins, and it's not Bitcoin exchanges only, it's cryptocurrency exchanges. So most Bitcoins are bought and sold through online services called exchanges. Knowing how to buy Bitcoin is an essential first step in getting started with the digital currency. Now, when you select any exchange, try and go to a prominent exchange, say like Poloniex, say MXC, Binance is one of my favorites. So you try and go there and select a prominent exchange. Don't try and go to an exchange which is giving you an attractive rate, but can later on back away from it. Like one of the exchanges wherein we invested a lot 6 months back, IDAX, and IDAX was amongst top 10 cryptocurrency exchanges in the world. However, the CEO decided one day that I will not share the private key, and all the transactions stopped. And then CEO realized 4 days, 5 days down the line that he should come back to the would come back to work, and it was only then IDAX came back. But still, it's not amongst top 10 now. It is maybe amongst top 200. Now, security and anonymity. As an Indian, right now for Indians, this is not an option. Security is, anonymity is not. As an Indian, if you sign up with any prominent exchange, you will have to do KYC. You will have to submit your maybe Aadhaar card. You will have to submit your PAN card for sure. You will have to verify a few stuff. But it is sort of in your favor also, because if that is the law of the land, you will have to follow it. Again, this is done, the KYCs is done to prevent any kind of terrorist activities, to make sure that you are not violating any kind of anti-money laundering law, to make sure that you are not trying to do any kind of hawala kind of thing. Now, as I said earlier, do not forget to keep your Bitcoin off unknown exchanges. So a lot of fraud exchanges, they come up every day. They'll say that we'll sell you Bitcoin in, say, Bitcoin is 9,000, we'll sell you in 7,000 US dollars. But if you pay 7,000 US dollars, you will receive a Bitcoin, which will be essentially a database entry only in your in their database. However, once you want to transfer it, it will not happen. So that's why it is always advised to keep your Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency off your unknown exchanges. Now, these are different wallets. As I said, Ledger NOS is something I personally use. There is Trezor. These are good exchanges. Bittrex, Bitfinex, Kraken is one of the best. Binance is one of the best. I don't know why we have not mentioned it here. but I personally use Binance. It is the app is awesome, so you can do a lot over app itself. These are some of the major cryptocurrencies. This is Ethereum. This is Litecoin. This is Dash. This is Monero. This is Ripple. RealTract is one of our project, which is an all-in-one platform for multi-tiered smart contract 2.0. These smart contracts will essentially execute on their own once we are on our mainnet, and a lot of things will be faster than Ethereum. Ethereum is an open source public blockchain-based distributed computing platform. In Ethereum network, you can actually make your own tokens. All the major tokens that you see nowadays are on Ethereum network only. So this is a summary of how Bitcoin works and how it comes into blockchain, how validation happens, blocks are mined, and the transaction is completed. Thank you so much for your time. And these are a few references which we have used. Uh, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those.
Thank you, Rahul sir, for explaining us the topic in such a easy and understandable manner. So now let me invite John sir to present the question on behalf of the audience. Over to
Yes.
you, John sir.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, Sachin has asked, who decides the value of currency and why them?
So the value of currency, say for example, Bitcoin or Ethereum, if you see they are on a lot of exchanges, on all the major cryptocurrency exchanges, and it strictly depends on demand and supply. At this level, for these currencies, you can't manage the price. So it's strictly, so if there is more demand, the price will increase. If there is less demand, the price is going to decrease. Hello.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. We'll move on to the next question, sir.
Yes.
How much do you think Pi network by Stanford graduates will grow by 2025? The same person is asking the questions.
Can you repeat the question, please?
How much do you think PI network by Stanford graduates will grow by 2025?
See, Pi is something I came to know across in less than a week ago. Every day there are projects that are coming in from Stanford, from Kellogg's, from MIT, from also IITs, all sorts of things.
Yes.
So I don't dwell too much into it. I use something called as a CMC, Coin Market Cap. CMC has a listing of all the major cryptocurrencies. They have more than 2,500, more than 5,000 projects listed on this. Now,
Okay.
after 200 top 200 projects, any project that you invest in is a risk, and whether it is Pi or anything else for that matter, anything going out of it, if they have created an ecosystem which is going to support their currency. Say, for example, I'm going to deliver food, and this is supported by my coin, and I have created my own ecosystem. Then yes, it can happen. They may grow. But if they don't have an ecosystem, if it is, I think it is only used for mobile mining or something. I don't see a lot of value in it. I don't see that happening a lot in a global kind of scenario, because you don't know in backend what kind of permissions they have taken and what kind of data they are taking out of your cell phone. So I don't
Yes.
believe in giving in a lot of permissions on my cell phone and on my laptop to third party applications to use them. So I don't think it's going to grow a lot. But if you believe in the project, you do it as a project. You don't do it to make money.
Yes. So we move on, sir. Any prediction if the cryptocurrencies would? One second. Yeah. Any prediction if the cryptocurrencies would dominate the market in terms of regular usage?
See, globally it is happening in small countries which are extremely high end and developed. It's happening. It's happening in Estonia. It's happening in US. It's happening in South Korea. Now, globally, 75% of all transactions happen only in two countries, which is South Korea and US. So the rest
Yes.
of the world is left with 25% of the global transactions.
Yes.
Now it is growing, but if you think that you can buy maybe You can go to Tanishq, and if you have Bitcoin, you can buy gold out of it. It will not happen maybe for at least next 10, 15 years in India. However, you can use it for a lot of business purposes, like we use it. If I want to buy a software application from, say, someone in US, there are global markets wherein I pay in Bitcoin and I get that software. On the contrary, if we deliver a lot of blockchain based services and products also. So we deliver
Yes.
those products and services, and we take Bitcoin as payment also.
Yes. 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 So we move on to the next question, sir.
Yes.
What is the cost? What is the cost of installation, operation, and maintenance, etc., that may incur to use the cryptocurrency as a mode of transactions, if any?
Can you please repeat the question again?
Yeah. What is the cost of installation, operation, and maintenance that may
Yes.
incur to use cryptocurrency as a mode of transactions, if any?
No, you want to receive or you want to pay?
This question is asked by Aniket Patil, sir. So if he can on the mic and if he can ask the question, then it would be nice. Aniket, sir, if you can switch on your mic and ask the question.
Yes, sir. It's both way. You can explain if I'm receiving or I'm paying someone.
So there are, like you see, you have seen swipe machines in all the DMarts and across the world. You have seen swipe machines. So there are swipe machines available in market, not expensive. I think less, around 100 US dollars, 120 US dollars, wherein you can receive Bitcoins and Ethereums. Only these two currencies.
Okay,
And
sir.
and to send, you need slight different infrastructure. You need at least some UI, some kind of user interface wherein you need to paste the receiver's address. So for that, you need some kind of typing and some kind of pasting part. But otherwise, you can receive it on the card itself.
Yeah, and what is the cost of that service, sir? I mean, to use that service.
So services, you will have to create the interface, but there are so many open source softwares available free of cost, and the hardware will be around 120 US dollars. A swipe machine, which is enabled to use cryptocurrencies.
Yeah.
It's
Okay, sir.
available on your Alibaba and Wish. It's available there. 120 US dollars.
Okay. Yeah, sir. Thank you.
Sir, there are a couple more. What about the security of Bitcoin if there are no restriction to the user? Jay has asked the question.
No, so if it is my Bitcoin, it is in my wallet. Now
Yeah.
it's like money. So if my money is in my wallet, it is in my pocket, it is in my home, it is in my bank account, or it is in my bank vault. The security, I'm responsible for its security. It is not insecure at all unless you tell someone the password.
Yeah.
Nowadays, say a lot of exchanges, once you, so if I have say one Bitcoin in my wallet, I want to send one Bitcoin to you. So that they have put in multiple checks and balances in place. So if I want to send it to you, a mail will also come on my email, and once I verify over email that yes, kindly send it across, only then the transaction will happen. Otherwise it will not happen. So even if I open my app and you got my app which was opened and you transfer it in your wallet, it will not happen. You will have to verify it over email.